Welcome back to Journey at Home. I am Matt, and it is looking like Christmas around here at Journey. I will tell you real quick, if you are here local, we're having special Christmas services on Friday night, December 23rd at 6 p.m. at 7:30. We would love to have you here at the Four Center, but we're thrilled to have you here for Journey at Home today as we start a brand new Christmas series. And if this is your first time joining us, welcome to the community. We hope you find this to be helpful and inspiring enough that you will hit that like button and you will subscribe and stay connected with us. And if you're not yet a follower of Jesus, you need to know that one of the things people don't tell us about when we first begin following Jesus is there's sometimes a weariness in following God. We all experience this. Every Jesus follower goes through these seasons of life where I think if we were really honest, we just get tired of being good. You know, we get tired of following. We get tired of doing the right thing. And part of that weariness comes from feeling like there's no payback for doing what's right. You know, I did the right thing on Monday. I ought to get rewarded for that by Thursday. Or I've been a priority percentage giver for 3 months now. I've been trying to be generous, and I should have gotten some big check in the mail from some anonymous person so I know God's going to bless me, you know. Or maybe I prayed for this thing on Monday, and it's so hard and it's so painful, and well, Friday's come, God still hasn't answered my prayers. So what's happened? I mean, is God busy with something else? Why am I having to wait? Or maybe if you're a college student, you know, you've been so committed this semester to living by your values, but it's meant sitting alone in your dorm room a lot of weekends, and you're just tired of being left out. You're weary. You still love God. You still believe all this stuff, but in terms of the follow-through, you're about ready to give up because you're worn out. And I would guess that's where some of you are right now. And maybe you just like some time off, you know, so you can do your own thing with a clear conscience. You'd like a little vacation from Jesus. If you were honest, maybe you would say, hey, I would just love to be selfish for a little while and not feel bad about it. Or I want to break from serving others. I want to break from giving. I want to break from coming to church or going to small group because it just feels hard right now. I just want to live for me for a little bit. So I want to say two things about that. First, it is okay to be tired and weary from waiting and to be tired and weary from doing good. And second, if you feel that way, you are not alone. We have all been there. So what do? Do you just give up? Do you take a break? Do you live for you for a little while? Well, you can, and honestly, I guess life may feel more fun for a little bit, but in the long run, those decisions will move you in a direction towards a destination where you really don't want to be, and I think you know that. Nobody's ever chased selfishness and ended up in a good place in life. But what's the alternative? Is it possible to remain strong when the waiting is so long? Well, today, I want to show you a story as we start this Nights Before Christmas series that answers that question. See, when you read the history of the Jewish people and their relationship with God, it's encouraging because you find that they frequently got tired and weary from waiting on God to do good for them when they felt like they'd been good enough for God. You know, God had made them a promise early on that one day He was going to show up on earth, He was going to reveal Himself to the world through the Jewish people. So at first, if you know much about their history, instead of having a king like every other nation around them, they just waited and waited for God to physically come and be their king. But God didn't. So they got tired of waiting and they decided they wanted their own physical king. But that didn't actually go very well. And to summarize a lot of history, their nation, their kingdom ended up splitting around 975 BC into two different parts. There was the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. So the northern kingdom, they retained the name Israel. The southern kingdom, they called themselves Judah. And that's where Jerusalem and Bethlehem were both located. So the Jewish people, well, they waited and they waited for God to reunite the kingdom, but that never happened. So fast forward to about 735 BC. It's over 200 years after the kingdom had split. And a political crisis unfolds. The king of Israel goes to the king of a nation that was adjacent to them called Aram, and he approaches the king of Aram with a really bad idea. He says, let's make an alliance, let's bring our armies together, and let's attack the king of Assyria. You probably have heard of the Assyrians. Assyria was a superpower, the big dog in that day, and they bullied these nations around them so much that everybody hated them. So these two kings decide, okay, let's do this, but we need some help. So they send a messenger to Ahaz, who is the king of Judah, the southern kingdom. And he's in Jerusalem, and they say to Ahaz, will you join us in attacking Assyria? Now Ahaz knows that even if you combine the forces of Aram, Israel, and Judah, they're not going to be able to defeat Assyria. But on the other hand, he also knows It's a catch-22. If he refuses to join forces with Israel and Judah, or in Aram rather, they'll be so offended that they'll probably attack his country. And that is exactly what happens. He tries to stall giving them an answer, he tries to put it off, but they get impatient. So Aram attacks the edges of the kingdom of Judah, and then the army of Israel marches straight for Jerusalem, the capital city. So in the midst of all of this confusion, God sends a prophet named Isaiah with a message that is specifically for the people of Judah who have remained faithful to God, but nothing good seems to be happening to them. And they are tired, they are weary. And so I want to share with you just a little bit of this message because I think there's some encouragement in it for all of us who are trying to remain strong when the waiting feels so long. So here's part of what God told them through Isaiah. He said, Isaiah, go tell them, comfort my people. In other words, tell them, I see you. I know you're tired. I know you need some comfort. It's okay. See, you may not think God's paying attention, but he is. And here's how much he cares. He tells these people, God tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers the lambs in his arms. He carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. So Isaiah is reminding them, and he's reminding all of us, that while it may look like God isn't active, while it may look like he's forgotten his promise and he doesn't care, that's actually not true. He loves us. He's active even when we don't see it. He's there and he cares. And then Isaiah reminds us of this. He asks the question of these people, do you not know? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the very beginning? Have you not understood since the earth was founded that God sits enthroned above the circle of the earth? And catch this, and its people are like grasshoppers to him. So God's going, all right, you're afraid of these kings coming down. They're like grasshoppers to me. He's saying to us, okay, you're afraid of this situation. You're afraid of your boss and what he's going to do. You're afraid of the people in your fraternity, your sorority, and what's going to happen. They're like grasshoppers to me. So do not abandon me over some temporary set of circumstances that you don't think I have control of. Remember, I'm still God, and there's another alternative. So let's just shift your perspective, and here's the advice God gives them and us. He says, lift your eyes and look to the heavens. In other words, all right, I know you're tired. I know you want to sign the papers, call the lawyer, make that decision. I know you want to invite them to move in. I know you do. But before you do that, just do me one favor, God says. Tonight, go outside, lift your eyes up to the sky, and just keep them there until you find yourself going, wow, I am considering abandoning, turning my back on the God who made all of this. And I'm considering doing it just because I'm having to wait longer than I want to wait. For what? I want. God goes on, asks some other questions of us. He says, who created all these? He who brings out the starry host, one by one, calls them forth, each of them by name. Because of his great power and God's mighty strength, not one of them is missing. So Isaiah, as he's talking to these people, he's like, all right, God's named every star. God makes sure they're all in their place. If he can keep the cosmos, the universe, in order, he really can handle whatever you're facing. And he promises to. Listen to this promise that God makes him. Isaiah says, God gives strength to the weary, and he increases the power of the weak. You know what that means? It means when you're weary, it is not because you've sinned. It's not because you've done anything wrong necessarily. It's not because God's abandoned you. Actually, in your weariness, God offers you his strength. So weariness is no excuse to turn your back on God. It's actually a reason to run to him and to fall on your knees in front of him and just be honest and go, I am tired. I'm on the verge of walking out, but I don't want to walk out. So God, will you help me? And if you will do that, God will go, oh, I'm so glad you turned to me because I want to give strength to the weary. I want to give power to the weak. I'm not mad at you for being on the verge of walking away. I actually want to help you because here's what God says. Even youths grow weary and tired, and young men stumble and fall. In other words, life's not easy for anybody. There is a weariness in waiting that we all experience. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. Now, what's so interesting about that word hope is it means waiting with eager anticipation. It's a word that was sometimes used to describe back then a thief hiding by the side of the road, just waiting for somebody to pass by. So it carries this idea of an eager, leaning forward, anticipatory kind of waiting. Isaiah is reminding them, he's reminding us, I know you can't change your circumstances. I know you're tired right now. But if you'll just lean forward and anticipate God doing something, He will. Because as weary as you are, God is faithful. And your situation is not hidden from Him. He cares for you. And if you'll lean into Him, you will find the strength you need to endure in your weakness. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They'll run and not be weary. They'll walk and not be faint. So, can you remain strong when the waiting feels so long? Well, you can, if you'll pull back from your circumstances that are wearing you down. If you'll go outside, look up at the stars, gain a different perspective. If you'll just remember who God is. Remember that if He has the power to sustain the galaxy, He's got the power to sustain you. So instead of taking a break when you're tired, turning your back on Him, would you just lean into Him intensely, eagerly, and expectantly and ask Him for strength? If you will, He promises He will give strength when you're weary and power when you're weak. So, if you're in one of these seasons right now, maybe you just wake up each day and you're honest with God. You say, God, I'm tired, and I've only got two options. I can lean hard into you, or I can walk away, I can take a break, I can quit trying. But I don't want to walk away, but I need you to keep your promise. You promised to give strength to the weary. So God, I'm going to step back, I'm going to look up, and I'm going to ask you to do that for me right now. Because listen, when you refuse to give up on doing good, you will reap a harvest. In due time, there is a payoff for those who keep trusting Jesus. It may not be as fast as you want, but it will happen because God always keeps His promises. Sure, there's a weariness in waiting, but there is a hope and a strength found in the God who loves you so much. He chose to wait with you. So learn to lean into Him during this season.